What is your freedom worth to you? Each of our guests had a light bulb moment. They longed to live rather than merely exist. They smashed through their fears and programmed minds, trusting themselves, their faith, and their survival instincts, leaving the guilt, fear, oppression, and drudgery of their past for a brighter future. They took a brave and courageous step into freedom. This is their story of how they got a life. Welcome to Get a Life Podcast, Cult Conversations. You matter, and so does your story.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Get a Life Podcast, Cult Conversations. We are back here with Carmen and Jackie, and our special guest is Tiffany. Welcome, Tiffany.
Hi.
Tiffany is from the UK, and she is going to take us on a journey of her abuse she endured and suffered through the PBCC. And we are very proud of you of stepping up to this table and sharing your story with us. These stories have had an incredible impact on the brethren that are still inside, and also those that have suffered and kept quiet on the outside. So I commend every brave ex-member who steps up to this podcast and wants to tell their story. So thank you so much for being here, Tiffany. And I'm going to hand the mic over to you. And if you just want to introduce yourself, what part of the UK you're from, and what prompted you, what happened, and what made you want to leave.
Okay, it's a lot to uncover. I don't really know where to start, but yeah, I'm Tiffany. I live in Kent currently in the UK. Long story to how I got here. So I guess just start at the beginning. I was actually born outside of the cult, surprisingly enough. My mum left when she was in her late teens. She just didn't get on with her family. As far as I know, I don't really know too much information. I didn't really dig into much, but yeah, she left and obviously met my dad. Had some children, and my dad unfortunately passed away when I was younger from a heart attack. And she then moved on to another guy who my stepdad had my younger brother. And life, to be honest, was normal. Obviously, grew up with TV, played with other kids. A few little things I found out later in life did happen to me when I was a younger child, from my dad and my stepdad. Abuse-wise, obviously, then I wasn't aware. I was too little. But yeah, life was pretty normal. Went to a normal school, went to parties, had pets, all the normal stuff that you just have as a kid. And I just remember one day, everything just came crashing down on my head. I don't really know what age I was. I think I was about 6 or 7, like thereabouts, still pretty young child. And Mum had decided that she wanted to go back to the brethren. I had no idea what this was. Nothing had been discussed. Obviously, I'm just a kid. I had younger siblings, and all I can vividly remember is screaming at the top of my lungs because my granddad, my mum's dad, who'd come to collect us, said I'd never see my stepdad again. I'd never see my friends again. And it's going to be a completely new life. Like, everything's going to change from here. You need to say goodbye. And I was just, what is going on? Like, there was vans and there was people everywhere, and all these adults were talking, and I was just being ripped away from my stepdad. very strange. And we went to my nan and granddad's house, who in the time lived in Cosham, I believe, like the Portsmouth kind of area. And I remember going into the house, and the first thing my nan saying to me was, "You need a scarf." I was so confused. And my brother, he was like, "But why don't I get one?" Because we all thought as little kids it was just like a scarf.
Yeah.
And she took me upstairs, and at the time it was one of those, do you remember the crochet ones on a headband? Oh, so she made me wear this, obviously, and I just, everything was such a blur and everything was happening at once. She got me changed out of my little jeans and put me in a skirt with like some leggings underneath and this headscarf, and I was confused. And all of us kids were in the lounge, and my nan and granddad and my mum and some of the like elders from there were out in the garden talking about stuff. Obviously didn't know where we were going to live. They were trying to like plan everything out, and it got resolved in the end that we were going to live at my great granny Taylor's house for a while. Obviously she was single. I think she moved in with my nan and granddad at that point, and we just took her house. And from that day, everything in my life felt so weird. I was so used to like being free, like just being a normal kid, and all of a sudden it's like I have to go to church. I was at the age where I know what's going on, but why am I going to church? Why all of a sudden can I not go outside to play? Where's the TV? What on earth is going on? It took me ages, and my mum did sit down and talk to me about it at one point, a little bit later on, probably a year later, as to what was happening, and that this is where she'd grown up, and it was, everyone believes in God, and it's going to be a much better upbringing. You get to have like special friends, and like you're in a little secluded group that's like a family, and it's all going to be fun. Obviously later in life I'm like, okay, so why did you leave then? But that's another story. And yeah, we did still go to mainstream schools at that time, because the little brethren schools stuff weren't open yet. But all of the RE lessons and all of the like meetings they had before school where you sing hymns, we all had to stand outside. And I just remember just standing by the doors looking in the glass going, why can't I be in there? This is just normal for me. Like, what is going on? We had to go home at lunchtime, and it was just strange. And then we lived there for a while. I kind of got accustomed to going to church and all that stuff. And then all of a sudden we're moving again. And this time we're going to Ireland. Yay! What? So I just got used to everyone, making new friends again, making friends in school again, getting used to this life. And now we're moving to a completely different country. And I can't remember, maybe 13-ish.
Right.
It was strange. We just upped and left. Nan and Grandad came with us, and I later found out it was because they were planning to move to France for business. That didn't work out, but they had a business opportunity in Ireland. My granddad started his own company, so that's why they moved. And obviously they were the support for my mum at the time. So yeah, we upped and moved, and that was even stranger. We went from quite a big church to a tiny one. And actually Anne came from the same place that we moved to, went to the same church as her, and it was tiny, and there was nobody my age, no girls my age anyway. In my class there was only 2 boys, which in itself was not great because I couldn't make friends with boys, obviously. And that's when kind of everything started to go a bit wrong. I was very confused. I was left out of a lot of decisions, and obviously I'm a child. You just get on and do what your parents say, but it's massive life-changing decisions decisions, and nobody had said anything to me about what's happening. It's just this is what's going to happen, and it mentally at that point ruined me, to be honest. And because of quite the small community in Warren Point, it was really hard. I didn't know anybody again. There wasn't that many people to get to know that were my age. Also, there weren't that many girls. So my problem was I've been told all these rules and things that I can and can't do. And now even the rules that I can follow, I can't, because there's no one here. And I just remember the first church night in Warren Point. I got all the boys from that church to all line up by the gate. And I went through them one by one and said, one of you is going to be my boyfriend. Not like that. I just need a friend because there's no girls. And I went through them one by one and gave them all little descriptions. You're too short. Don't like the colour of your hair. You have glasses like you do as a little 13-year-old. And I ended up picking someone who has actually left the cult now as well. He is a famous pastry chef in Italy. I picked him at 13 and we're still really good friends now. So it all worked out.
Oh, that's nice.
And he was actually in my class as well. So it was one of the boys in my year that I just, to this day, it just makes me laugh.
Tiffany, can I just ask a question? So I'm trying to imagine here you are, this 7-year-old that's had what most people perceive a normal life, and suddenly your life changes. Did anybody sit down with you and explained in children's terms what this church was about, what they believed in, how they believed in separation, why it was, and just explained about their faith to you? So you try to have some understanding.
Never ever had that conversation ever.
Yeah.
Obviously at a young age you are very easily influenced, and you learn to get into whatever the adults are doing, and you just follow it. But no one ever sat me down and said, this is what we believe in, this is who we are, this is why we go to suppers. Like, none of that was explained. I just went.
Because as you say, to a 7-year-old, if your parents chose to go to a church of a particular faith, you would try and try and get the child to buy into it in a child way, and they would probably accept it. But if those changes were never explained to you why they were happening and why you suddenly had to wear this little scarf every time you went out and things like that, it's very confusing, I imagine.
The only thing that obviously was explained by my nan is that it was like a little family unit and they believed in God. That was basically it. And the fact that she had said to me, we're special people, I felt so cool. Like, I was like, I'm special. Okay. There's only a few of us in the world. I get to wear this thing on my head. It makes me stand out. Definitely not now, but at the time I was just like, this is so cool. And I have something that my brothers don't have. Like, I have a headscarf, you don't. So that was really it. And obviously it still wasn't explained to me when we moved to Ireland about anything. I just got on with it, to be honest. And I did really like it. I liked the fact that I had special friends and I got special treatment at like mainstream schools. And like, if I couldn't get involved in the Christmas parties at school, I'd get like a little goodie bag to take home, and just like, I felt special. So it didn't bother me. It was just like, okay, this is cool, this is what's happening. I can't watch TV and play with my friends, but I now have £500 worth of Barbies because that's all I can play with now. Like, not allowed to do anything else. And that was cool as well. It's like, let's go to the toy shop. We're going to buy you loads of toys so you don't do anything you shouldn't be. Just sit in your room and play with your Barbies. That's fine. So it was just like one big birthday as well. I got so much stuff, so many new clothes, handbags. I was a little girl. Like, that's great. So moved to Ireland. Everything seemed to be okay, to be honest. And then I went to a Brethren school. Nice. That was never again. Oh my goodness. And that's where everything just went wrong. The school had 16 pupils in total.
Oh, wow.
Some classes had 1 kid. The biggest class had 6 kids. Obviously, mine was just me and 2 boys. And I wasn't used to it. Everything was weird. Like, I went from a massive school, having to go home at lunches and kind of just, getting on with life, to you can now stay in school. There's no one here to talk to. Most of them are boys. There was 3 girls, one of them being me, and they were very different and didn't really like me very much because I wasn't them. I didn't grow up with them, and I just wasn't a part of it. So due to that, I got bullied really, really bad. Really bad. It started with, I was a very big kid, fat, like proper big. Just not great looking. And they were very pretty. Like, they were the pretty girls, the popular girls, and the ones that the boys, if they could, tried to flirt with maybe, or have a little chat with. And I would always get water thrown in my face, blue tack in my drink, pins in the end of bendy rulers, all of that. Just not great. Locked in the stationery cupboard, everything, my books taken off of me, all of that normal crap. But it did really affect me, especially when there was no one I could really go to, as you can't hide in a school of 16. Everyone knows everything. And I just didn't have any friends. So I want
to remind the viewers and listeners that this bullying took place in a Brethren school.
Yes.
That is created for the Brethren students to keep them from the outside world. And this is an account that we hear time and time and time again, that the bullying is worse than what you would experience in a regular school.
100%. In regular schools, you'll get like left out and you may get taunted a little bit, but physically hurt or like your property being damaged, it's another level of bullying. Like, it's not okay. And you're taught in the churches to like love thy neighbor, don't do something if you wouldn't like it done to you, all this and I'm sorry, but it's so bad. Like, it's really bad. And
so you obviously experienced a normal public school system and the Brethren school system. Yep. Did the Brethren school system have the help available for you to deal with this kind of stuff like the public school system would have?
Absolutely not. I remember getting bullied in the mainstream school in Ireland. It wasn't anything really bad, but it still made me feel like crap. And I used to go to the head teacher all the time. We'd sit down, have little discussions. He'd get the kids into the room and say, you need to kiss and make up. Basically, this should not be happening. Why do you? And he questioned it as well. Like, why did you feel the need to do this? Is there any way that we can help you as the bully to feel a certain way? And how do you think you made her feel? Now imagine that was you. All that kind of stuff that you would talk about. When I went to the head teacher in the Brethren school, nothing. Yeah. And when I sat down and I said, I'm being physically bullied, it's not just words, I'm getting attacked and I'm getting told off by my teachers because I don't have my lesson notes. They were thrown in a puddle of water outside. That's why I don't have them. It's not my fault. And he said, but there must be a reason why they're doing this to you.
Yeah.
I'm existing, mate. What on earth are you on about? I'm just going about my normal day. I'm not pissing anyone off. I'm not doing anything I shouldn't be. They just don't like me. And apparently it's my fault. Like, it never made sense. And in the end, I gave up. I gave up talking to teachers, and they are not part of the cult. I think you've heard that before, but they're not. And in my head, it's just they're earning too much money to go against something that they've quite clearly been sat down and told, if this happens, you just need to push under the rug. They're not going to mess up a career that pays them thousands of pounds that they could never get in a normal school. And I think that's why it happened. I don't really want to talk about self-harm or suicide very much, but I did go through that in school as well. I didn't go to the head teacher. I went to one of my favorite teachers, actually, who was our geography teacher. And I said, I need to talk to you about something. And she was like, you look quite panicky, like something's clearly going on. And I sat down with her, and she did actually listen to me. I told her about what was happening, what I was planning to do, which in itself, if someone says something like that, you need to sort that out.
Yeah.
And she said, I wish I could help you, Tiff. I really do. I just can't. And I at the time, I was like, I understand there's nothing you can physically do to help me, but that's not what she was meaning. She's just like, I can't report this to anyone. I can't speak to anyone about this. It's got to stay between us. And I went back to her at the end of the day, and I did say to her, if I don't come in tomorrow, it's your fault. And she burst into tears. And I didn't mean it like that. I wasn't trying to be horrible, but it's like I've said something that you want to take seriously, but because of quite clearly the
politics.
Yeah, none of it made sense. And obviously the CEOs and stuff of the school have quite clearly said something to you that you can't deal with it. So it's your fault if I'm not here tomorrow. And I felt bad, but I said it because I did mean it. It's like something's got to change. Nothing happened. I was fine, clearly, but
it's the fact that you felt brave enough to go to somebody that you thought you could trust, and that choice was taken away from her. She clearly knew what would happen if she reported this.
100%.
And I mean, we hear from the teachers now. I mean, we've been in contact with a lot of teachers. I mean, a ton of teachers, and they all come back and say the same thing. Exactly what you experienced on the other end, being a student, right? Where those teachers know of their position. And I'm going to insert in here some quotes from Bruce Hales's ministry on how harsh he is with how he portrays his schooling system to his flock. So I'll insert them in here for people to read through. But it just, I guess, what I'm trying to portray to the viewers and listeners is here you are, Tiff, literally experiencing the other end of a child, a teenager, literally needing help. She's at the end of her rope. Whether you did or didn't mean or didn't want to, it doesn't matter. It was your cry for help. And whereas in a public school system, they would take that serious. They would be accountable to the law for reporting that. Right.
Absolutely.
Here you are is in the Brethren school where it's swept under the rug. And this right here is why these schools need to be shut down. Shut 100%. Down or go through a major overhaul in how the Brethren communicate with their teachers. And why I say shut down is I don't believe the Brethren have the capacity or the capability to do what they need to do in these schools, because it will be another Band-Aid, check the box, fix, and show to the government that, yeah, we fixed it. When in reality, if you're not addressing the hierarchical system that runs through the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church, that translates into their school system. And so that's why my heart goes out to the kids that are in there right now. And 100%. From all the stories that we've heard from these teachers, that these schools need to be shut down. The Brethren need to stay in control of the schooling. We don't want to let worldly people run our schools. We don't want worldly influences running our schools. We want to have the Brethren, the trustees, the Brethren, the fathers. We want them to stay in control. Then they won't be places of danger. London, UK reading, Tuesday, March 30th, 2004. Well, we don't want to lose it. We don't want to go back on the way it was set up. It was set up to deliver the young people from the world. We don't want to be stupid enough to go back to the world. Otherwise, the Lord might take away our liberties, might take away what the government has given us. Sydney reading, Saturday, July 24th, 2004. Just because we've got worldly people there, they don't run the place. We're in control. Sydney reading, Saturday, February 25th, 2006. We're being challenged publicly about, do we teach, evolution in our schools? And I don't know whether the answer will hold water exactly, but I said, yes, we teach evolution, that it's a falsehood. Friday, April 28th, 2006. I hear there are some school teachers around that are no good. I want quality teachers that can teach and stick to teaching and don't come under influences of preference and prejudice. Otherwise, I just fire them. Just give them the notice. Caboolture, reading, Wednesday, March 25th, 2008. My philosophy about schooling is I want to be in control, and I want to know these teachers know that we're in control, and control is critical. And if they don't respect you, I wouldn't have them near the place. They've got to respect us. Our Christianity, don't have to understand it, but they're not allowed to oppose it. They've got to respect our way of life, the way we're bringing our families up, our ethos, and that's how you keep control in the school. Wednesday, October 7th, 2009. We didn't develop Brethren schools to let the devil into them. We developed the Brethren schools to get the children away from the devil's influence in the public schools. St. Catherine's, Thursday, October 15th, 2009. To take the children out of the worldly companionships. Sydney, February 18th, 2012. I've always said the Brethren must be in charge of the school. We call the shots. The teachers teach, but we hire them and fire them. But if they can't control the class, and if they're going to teach stuff that we don't agree with, and if they can't satisfy us that it's in accordance with the curriculum, we want to maintain the schools with the approval of the government and, of course, the funding. And the funding that comes in on a very regular basis. Armadale, March 27th, 2012. Young people come in from dreadful conditions in the world. Dreadful, unspeakable, indescribable conditions of immorality. Little children coming to school, while they're unwittingly even defile younger persons, younger children. Stamford, Saturday, December 10th, 2011. I want to add in here, after having to read those all out, that the absolute hypocrisy of Bruce Hales and his Hitler authoritarian behaviors is that he has created 10 times the amount of mess inside his schooling system that he thinks he's protecting his children and the children of the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church from. After listening to all of those quotes and the arrogance that he sits in there with, what will it take for us to be able to protect the children that are in there? And to be able to get the help we need to have these schools looked into more so that these children aren't subject to the absolute bullying, the abuse, and everything that he just quoted on the last ministry excerpt. The dreadful, unspeakable, indescribable conditions of immorality. That is what is sitting inside OneSchool Global. And we hear account after account from survivors that come out of there. Account after account of the teachers that land in our inbox and doing phone calls and Zoom calls with that describe the exact thing that he thinks he is protecting his flock from.
Yeah, I 100% agree. There's nothing, to be honest, there's nothing positive about those schools. There really isn't. And when they were being opened, and obviously we had discussions in like meetings and things about it, it's like, but you're going to get one-to-one teaching. Your class is going to be so small. You're going to get the best education. And it's no, you don't. You get the same education as you would in a class of 30 kids if you're that kid that's just going to pay attention and not fuck around and throw pieces of paper. Like, you're getting the same thing. All you're physically doing is stopping us from having a social life, and that's about it.
Like, and an education, and I'm not suggesting that. I'm not suggesting they don't educate the children. I think they do it as near to the wire as they can get away with, in that children are not free in those schools to pursue anything they want to. Their choices are made for them, their career choices. So it's not just the bullying and the addressing the safeguarding issues and those types of things. It's also the fundamental of the education, giving the children the freedom of choice about what they want to do.
100%. I agree with that as well. Everything that I learned in school was not of any interest to me at all. And even like through GCSEs, you're not allowed to learn about slavery, about Hitler, about like actual things that happened, because they're not right, or whatever you want to. It's history, man. It makes no sense. When I was doing like extracurricular stuff since I've left, and I've obviously been doing a lot of research, when you actually read into things like that, there's nothing wrong with it. Obviously, Hitler as a person, fair enough, but you kind of need to know how people have got here through things that happen in history. There's nothing wrong with that. I don't understand. And being pressurized into learning business and accounts and English because that's all you're going to get when you leave. Great. My job was great. But that's not what I wanted to do. And you don't have a choice. Yeah. I was told this is the job you're going to get when you leave. You don't have a choice. Okay, well, I don't want to be answering phones for the next 10 years of my life before I get technically an arranged marriage. I don't want to do that. I'm into forensics and dead bodies. So you're definitely not allowed to do that. That's
not an avenue to pursue.
Definitely not allowed to learn. Which I do now. I'm very interested, but at the time, absolutely not. Even when I pursued law in A level, they sweated buckets. They were so concerned, and I went for family law as well. Not happy. And I was so shocked that was on the curriculum for us to do. I was like, yes, I need to do this. I need to learn this, because it's something that I'm never going to get a job in this because you're not allowed. But it's something that could be very useful at some point, which fair enough, it was. When I went to court with my son, it was very helpful. So, it's the schools just, I agree, need shut down, and the kids need proper education of what they actually want to do. Regardless if they get a job in that career or not, it's useful for expanding their knowledge on just normal worldly stuff that you kind of need to know.
Could you imagine them learning about Hitler in there? Like, and those bright minds that are on that understand power and control, and then looking up at their so-called man of God and relating the two.
Who is literally Hitler, running a race of white people that salute to him when he fucking stands up. Hello, that is literally Hitler. Come on. I mean, he hasn't killed anyone aside from...
Well, he does his killing a little bit differently.
He hasn't physically killed anyone, I don't think. So
he does that a little bit.
Didn't either. Yeah. He didn't physically kill anyone himself.
I was going to say Hitler probably absolved himself from responsibility too, but
honestly, I haven't spoken about a BDH since I left at all, and it makes me sick to the stomach to even think of that man. No. Anyway, let's not go there. The next little bit, it was towards the end of school now, I'd say. I had a sexual identification crisis, which was another really tough time for me. It was horrible. I went through a stage of, I think I like girls. Which is obviously fine. In there, definitely not. You can't speak to boys, and you can't, get to know boys, but you have to be straight, which makes no sense. And I think because of the lack of communication I was allowed with boys, I was getting a lot of connection with the girls who were in the church. We were allowed to hold hands and have make connections and cry to them, talk to them about stuff. And because I was getting that emotional connection there, I was getting more than that too. Started developing feelings for one of the girls in the church, but I was constantly wanting to go over to her house and just have little sleepovers, have tea parties, and just spend time with her. And I think it got to the point where people kind of found out there was something more than just Tiff's going over to her house to have a play date. There's something not quite right. And I remember having a priestly one night after church. Went over to one of the priest's house, and 2 other priests were there, and I was 16 at the time. They sat me down and they said, right, Tiff, we need you to explain what's going on with this girl. And me being me, I wasn't really scared of them at that point because not much had happened. Not with those 3 anyway. So I just said, I'm interested in this girl. I have feelings for her, and I think it's more than just a friend. I didn't realize at the time that that's not allowed, because you're not taught any sexual education or any of that like stuff really. And I didn't really know what it was either. I didn't know what I was feeling. And I thought they were going to help me, to be perfectly honest. I just came out with it, and they said, this is something that is not allowed in the church. You are not allowed to have sexual feelings towards the same sex. It says in the Bible, blah blah blah. And I was very
Can I just pause there a moment, because this is something that when you had this priestly visit, there was just you and 2 men.
So there was 3 men altogether. 3 priests
and you were how old? 16?
16. There was not my
nobody there to advocate for you, nobody there to support you, and these are 3 men. And I just want to leave that with the listeners, really, because that just would not be allowed to happen out here. It just would. It still kind of, when you're in the brethren, you know that happens, but when you come out and you realise how wrong that is. That there's you, vulnerable, 16, confused with your identity, and 3 men. Mm-hmm. I'll just leave that there. Carry on, Tiff.
Exactly. And you probably know what's coming next. Those men are off their freaking minds. And said, I don't want to delve in it too much, but they basically said, we'll prove you're not a lesbian. And that's where that ended. I then was even more confused. I had no idea what the hell had just happened. I didn't know who to speak to, because they were the ones you're supposed to speak to. I obviously didn't want to tell my mum. I was no way telling my grandparents. Absolutely not. And at the time, the only person I could trust was the girl I was interested in. And it just so happened that she was related to one of these men. And I did tell her what had happened. And she was scared and she didn't believe me. And I tried to explain it in a way where I wasn't going to get into trouble. And I kept repeating over and over, please don't say anything. Like, I don't know what's going to happen from here. I needed to tell someone, because I don't know what's happened myself. And then she asked how it came about, how the priestly visit came about. And now I'm sat there going, shit, I've just told her everything that's happened, but she doesn't know why it's happened. So I sat there and said, I love you. Okay. I have feelings for you. I have done ever since. And her face dropped. She went and told her mum that I had technically been using her as a friend to get close in a weird way. Now, when you don't know any different as a child, you don't know what to call it. You don't know what to say. So you just say it was weird, because you don't know what it is. And that was it. I was never allowed around there again. I had to have another priestly visit because I'd said something about it when they told me this should never leave your mouth, or it's on you, what happens next. And I didn't know what to do at that point. I didn't want to go home. I was genuinely so confused. And I then ended up living away from home for a long time, chopping and changing between families every other week, which as a 16-year-old living with so many different people who have so many different rules, like everyone's different in there. They all have different, like, expectations, or some are really strict and some are a bit more laid back. Some families I stayed with, I had to read a passage of the Bible, a passage of ministry, and pray before I went to bed. Some I just had to pray, and it was just all very confusing. And then I started questioning things, because why is every family so different? They're not the same. Everybody's practicing something different. Some mornings I woke up and I had to read the Bible straight away. I had to, they had like these little record device things that looked like a battery pack kind of thing that you had to speak into and then play it at breakfast to prove you'd actually read something. In this one family, other families, you just get up and have your breakfast. And it was just confusing. If everyone's so regimented in here and everything's supposed to be on the same level, why is everyone different? And it was hard. Like, I had all of my possessions in a suitcase and I was just taken from pillar to post constantly. And I was going through the end of my GCSEs, and a lot of the people I stayed with, the male figures in there were very abusive. They kind of took advantage of the fact that I was there. Don't want to delve into it too much, but there was a lot of sexual abuse happening. I had a lot of priestly visits at the time as my mum was going through some stuff as well. And I just happened to be around fully grown married men by myself all the time. And it was really hard. I didn't have anyone to speak to about anything. It's really difficult.
Yeah.
It was hard because my mum started to hate me a bit as well. Everything that I had told her about some stuff that had happened, she didn't believe it. Or I felt, now looking back, she was jealous of it, if the attention, if that makes sense. And I think that's why she hated me so much, which in itself is fucked in the head. Excuse my language, but it really is. It was messed up.
These priestly visits you were getting, was it like, what were they over? What was it? Was it just check-ins with you? Was it over specific reasons? Was it, like, do you remember what they were over?
Yeah. So most of them were just check-ins. Obviously, I wasn't living at home. They wanted to make sure that I was okay, that I was getting on with the family. I was still, getting on all right at school. Everything was okay. And that's really it. Unless there was an issue that was brought up with my mum at the time, and they wanted to explain some things that were happening or why she wasn't coming to meetings or whatever. Aside from that, it was just normal checkups. But my issue with that was, it wasn't just them coming to ask me if I was okay. It was, I'm going to take you into another room and I'm going to make sure you're okay, make sure you feel loved and you're special, not in the way that most people think that happens.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say this just for people that are listening. It's not all about intercourse either. Just FYI, it's not constant.
No. Exactly.
No.
Yeah, it's a lot of inappropriate touching, and like a lot of it was that I want to make sure you're okay, squishing parts of your body inside your leg, and kissing inappropriately as well. If someone's coming to check I'm okay, just quick kiss on the cheek or whatever. This is full in my mouth. Disgusting. Like, it really is. And I want to make people aware that is also sexual abuse. It's
abuse.
We had Jeremy Indica on this on our podcast. And so if anybody has not watched that podcast, In the Brethren, super important for you to go back and watch that podcast, because I think it's super, super, super important for the people inside the PBCC to understand that sexual abuse is not just about having intercourse. And these conversations need to be had. We need to be explicit and make a list of what is considered sexual abuse so that you inside there know, or those ex-members that are out now that are maybe questioning, well, was that sexual abuse? If you were violated in any way, shape, or form from somebody else, that is sexual abuse. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mothers, wake up. Don't let your daughter be taken away from you and approach. There is no excuse for a male dominant priestly visit with no mother present or no other woman present. You know, there's no excuse for it. In no circumstance will you get my child away from me. And I think that's just a normal mother response that somehow that's been brainwashed out of people, and it's not right.
And I think for those younger generations that are listening to us, I mean, we know we have a ton of listeners in the PBCC based on what we get back and people who contact us. Those younger generation mothers who are starting, those families that are starting to stand up to the doctrination of the women inside there. That is one thing that I would not back down on. Never, ever, ever allow your child to be in a priestly visit without you present. Do not allow it.
No. Yes, 100%.
And I'd add something else to that, Tiff, from and something I've said before, a legal standpoint. You were presumably still in Warren Point and were going from family to family within that locality at the time. Yeah. From memory, were you ever with any one family for more than a month?
No. And they weren't direct. They weren't ever, well, tell a lie, a little bit later on they were direct family, but at that point it was just any random local family that decided they wanted to have me for a week or two.
Okay, so quite apart from the fact that's pretty traumatic for you, living out of a suitcase in that respect.
Yeah.
You're in Northern Ireland, which comes under the same laws as England. And in England, if unofficial fostering happens for more than a month, it has to be reported to the social services for the child's protection. And I sometimes wonder when you said that, if maybe that's one of the reasons why, and if there's children in the PBCC that are living with a family, that should be reported to the social 100%. Services after 1 month of living away from the parents who have parental responsibility. And that is for the child's protection. Yeah. And if you're moved from pillar to post every month, obviously you're not living in any one family for a month. So they
don't have to report it.
Well,
also, social services are just classed as devils and demons, and you don't contact them. You should not be in contact with anyone like that. So I can understand why they try and dodge the law as much as possible. I mean, they do anyway. So it doesn't surprise me. I think I went to 13 families in total, and one of those was my choice in a different locality. Because I actually started working, obviously this is a bit later, but I started working with the girl I then went to live with a family, and that was my choice. It's like, I'm not living at home, I'm not allowed at home. I just got to live with whoever, really, at this point. And some were assigned, most of them were assigned when I was 16, 17, and then after that, it was my choice. And then I did live with my grandparents after that for a very long time. It was hard though. Like, all I wanted at that point was like just someone to give a shit, because no one did. Like, my other siblings were at home with my mum and everything was fine. They had a cushy life now because I was gone, and I was just passed around, and literally passed around as well. Like, it was horrible. I come home from school and it was just like, right, Tiff, we need to have a chat. And I'm like, okay, here we go again. While the mum's cooking dinner. Fine, let's go, kind of thing. Like, what am I supposed to do now? This is just my life. And it was horrible. And people genuinely didn't believe me. I did try and speak about it. There was one priest that he was a younger priest. And I did actually get on okay with him, to be honest. A few times he came over, but his wife was also present, and it was us three in a room, and I'd sit and just like, it was nearly like my therapy. I would speak to him about everything, and I felt comfortable enough to do that because she was also there. I knew nothing was gonna, and it was a more comfortable setting. Why shouldn't it be like that normally, or just have like, I want to bring this person along with me as emotional support? You're not allowed to, whatever. Stupid. But he did believe me that the problem was everyone's so closely related in that place. He couldn't say anything without him getting into trouble himself. And I didn't want that for him. It's just that I need an escape. I need to vent what I'm feeling. You don't need to tell anyone. You don't need to do anything. I just want to talk about it. You know what's going on. So if anything later on in life does happen, you know everything that's happened to me. And yeah, then I did start living with my grandparents. It got really bad. Like mega bad. I felt like everything I was doing there was being reported back to other people. The priestly visits stopped. I didn't know why, but I felt even more monitored living there. So I was like, they're obviously giving information back as to what I'm doing, so they don't need to come visit me. I'm also with family, so everything's going to be fine. And it just wasn't. I sent my nan up the wall, to the point where she did have a bit of a breakdown, and I feel bad to this day, like I really do. But I took everything out on her that I wanted to take out on my mum, and that was the problem. My granddad, bless his soul, he just about lost his shit with me as well, because I took out the other extreme on him, where I was questioning everything about the faith, literally everything. I was 17, nearly 18 at this point. And I'd obviously got a job. I'd left school, and everything seemed to be okay for a little while. I was going to work, doing my job, getting home, going to church, same mundane stuff, helping entertain, going to all of the meetings. Everything was fine, until I did start questioning too much. And that's when he had to rope in the heavies and come chat to me again, because I was finding out stuff that you probably shouldn't find out. It was interesting. I remember being in a heavy's house once, having a priestly, and he left to go to the toilet, and his work laptop just so happened to be open. And I looked through history, because I'm that child that just wants to, have a little look, see what's going on. And the thing, obviously, I didn't know what it was. I just knew it was bad, because I could clearly see it was not great. That's definitely not something you should be watching. So I just took little notes of everything. Every time I just saw something not quite right, even just the priestlies talking to a certain girl one way, or little things happening that just didn't add up in my head. And then when I got home at nighttime and I was by myself, I'd go through the Bible like a hawk and link it to to something that contradicted it. So all of this stuff about like priests watching porn, for example, linked to the Bible about not looking at indecent things, not doing anything outside of your marriage that you shouldn't, and being unlawful and all of that. And then I'd bring it up in these priestly visits and say, right, so we have to practice the Bible word for word. And they'd be like, yes, that's what we follow, that's what our life is. Okay, so why is this person doing this then? And that was it. I'd be sat there waiting for an explanation. It's like, right, please explain this to me then, because if he's allowed to do that, then why can't I hold hands with a guy that's in my class? That's not even comparable to what this guy is doing. Does his wife know? How did he even get access to that? Like, everything in my mind, I was so confused. And I started to pick up on little things like that, and they didn't like it. I was finding out far too much that should never have got out. And then I started questioning the faith altogether. So obviously I had my job, I had a bit more freedom, I had a car, and it was in Belfast, my job. So it's like an hour away drive. And on the way back, I'd always pop into like Sainsbury's to grab something quick to eat because I had to go straight to church because it was so far. And I was walking around there one day, and obviously we've been told that if you're not part of the church, you're going to hell, like regardless, because you're not part of it, whatever. And I'd always walk around and see like families happy and just like enjoying life. And I'm older now, so I could understand. And it's just like, if all of these people know they're going to hell and are going to burn when they die, why are they so happy? It makes no sense. Everyone should be like constantly worried and down, especially the older people. But nah, they're all, cracking on with their life. It doesn't make sense. And I started having therapy as well, which obviously was an outsider. And she was actually a Sikh. So that's a completely different religion. And I started questioning, like asking her questions about her religion. And then it just dawned on me, it's like, it's just one big fat man that wants loads of money and everyone to just go, whatever you want, mate. Because he wants a specific lifestyle. And it's not even real. Like no one's died and come back to life and said, you know what, Jesus is real. You can believe in what you want to, it's absolutely fine, but there's other religions too. And at the end of the day, it's just a group of people idolizing something for them to have faith in something that makes them feel better. Whether that is a gold statue of an elephant or a fat man from Australia, it doesn't matter, but you shouldn't be pressurized into something that you don't necessarily want to be a part of. And all of the stuff about like not eating with people outside of the cult and not having any sex before marriage and all of this crap, like don't cut your hair, don't do this, don't do that, none of it actually like affects your religious belief. None of that. It's all materialistic. Like it doesn't change what you believe in. And that's why I started doing stuff to see what would happen. So I started testing this faith like you would not believe. So obviously cinemas, it's a massive TV and you watch stuff that you shouldn't be watching. If you go there, then bad things will happen. Okay, cool. Let's go test that theory and see what happens. So I would go there with my little BlackBerry because I had to have one for work, and I'd stand with the big Odeon sign behind me, take a picture and be like, there's proof I went here. A week later, I'd show it to the priest that come around and say, I'm still alive. Nothing's happened. No one close to me has died. Nothing's happened. And I was there. It makes no sense. I went and got a tiny tattoo on my ankle. Nothing happened. Has since been removed. But yeah. And like just little things. And even down to my hair, I'd cut off like literally a microscopic amount just to, see what would happen. Absolutely nothing. So just nothing made sense. It's like clearly nothing is going to happen. I did try to escape them once with a boy from a year below me in school, which was fun. We had no idea what we were doing. He wanted to, we weren't in anything together. He just wanted to leave. So did I. And we just ran away into a field, sat down. It was pouring rain. We had no money. We had no idea what to do. We'd taken the little chip things out of our phone so they couldn't track us. We just sat there all night talking. It's like, well, what do we actually do from here? Unfortunately, somehow those phones are still tracked, even if you take the little thing out from inside. I don't really know how that works. But they found us and dragged us back. and that went from bad to worse. But he kind of just cracked on with life then. But deep in my body, it's like, I know this is what I want to do. I need to get out of this. My family could not give two tosses about me, clearly. I'm still not living at home. I'm causing issues for my grandparents now, and I don't want to do that. And nothing bad's going to happen. I don't believe in this shit anymore. So it gets a bit dark now, but I did try to kill myself in the way that I didn't want to die. I just needed a reason for authorities to take me away, basically. I knew that I needed somebody outside, and obviously you don't have contact with outsiders, so I couldn't just contact someone and say, come get me. So I had to do something drastic enough. And with my past of self-harm and stuff anyway, it was going to look realistic, to be honest. And I did. I tried to crash my car on the way to work. It didn't work because at the last moment, I shit myself. And it's like, I'm actually going to die if I do this. I was going to go head first into a lorry coming the other way. And it's like, I'm actually going to hurt myself. So I swerved a bit more. I ended up in a ditch. And I didn't go to work that day. I had to go up to the hospital because obviously they had to check if I had injuries and stuff. And they said to me there, like, are you okay? Like, that's not a normal crash. It's complete opposite side of the road. Like, how did you even end up over there? So I did tell them. Thankfully, there was no one like cult-wise in the room with me, because I wouldn't have had the balls to said anything at that point. And then they held me in the hospital while they contacted a mental health clinic kind of thing. And I had to have a conversation with someone from there and told them kind of everything, how I'd been self-harming before, and what had happened. And I did actually get sectioned for 6 weeks, which was pretty bad, in all fairness. I genuinely didn't think there was anything wrong with me. I just felt like I needed attention and an escape to get out of there. But I was actually harming myself for that. I needed a release and an escape from everything that was happening. And because I couldn't talk to anyone, I felt like that's the only way I could really do anything to help. And it was more pain than what I was getting from everything that was happening. And it made me feel better, which sucks. But yeah, I was in this, I was sectioned for 6 weeks, and the brethren did not like that at all. Obviously, that just, it doesn't happen. I'm now with actual professional people that can help me, that know the outside law. And it was scary, because I was also for the first time around fully grown people that were proper mental. If that makes sense. I obviously had issues, but these were strapped to beds kind of people, and it scared me. I was traumatized. And I had priestly visits in there. They had to come and cleanse the place, because there was devils and TVs and stuff everywhere. And the canteen, I was eating with like normal people, so to come bless me all the time and preach and all that crap. So I wasn't going to meetings either, obviously. And I remember coming up to the end of the 6 weeks, I didn't want to leave. I was scared about what was going to happen when I went back. And I didn't know what to do. The psychiatrist that sat down and obviously spoke to me and did the diagnosis and everything said, we don't have a reason to hold you here, because there's nothing, can't diagnose you with anything. There's nothing specifically wrong. You're not showing any traits of any like bipolar or split personality, none of that. Like, there's nothing wrong with you. You're obviously got a very traumatic situation going on. You just need help. Is there anything we can do? So I just said, is there any way you can get me somewhere to live? And they said no, they couldn't. I didn't really know about things like sheltered accommodation or anything at that point, so I couldn't like mention anything, but they couldn't help me, so I just went straight back into the crap I tried to get away from. And it made it worse because I tried to hurt myself. I wasn't allowed to work. I had to work from my nan and granddad's kitchen, where I was monitored all the time. I was not allowed to leave the house by myself. I was not allowed to be anywhere by myself. Even in the bathroom, it was a little bit, I had to say, I'm going to take a shower. There was a timer to the point where I had to come out at a specific time. Otherwise, they'd be coming in. And it got too much. Like, everyone was on top of me all the time. And I just couldn't do it. I was drinking so bad and still cutting myself. I was just stuck. I didn't really know what else to do. And that's when they decided that they were going to ship me off to France to live with Robbie Gregoire, one of the extra heavies over there. Oh, goodness. So that happened. I was there for...
And what was their reasoning to go all the way over there? What was the reasoning?
I couldn't get any help in Ireland, basically. Everywhere that I'd been living, most of them were Priestley's, heavies, sorry, and I wasn't getting any help from over here. And Robbie Gregoire was actually involved quite a lot in my mum's situation.
Okay.
So he kind of knew what was going on there.
Right.
They were quite friendly. They wrote letters and stuff, and he just offered to help out. And I had the best time of my life over there. Everyone was so nice. They accepted me in. Obviously, I know now there's a plot to fucking make me get back into their system. But I loved it. Like, I loved going to the churches there. Everything was a lot more chilled. They constantly had like loads of big families over for outside barbecues. It was just so nice. And then I had to leave because I was still cutting myself a lot, and I was working from his kitchen over there, and I tried to leave his house one night just to go for a little walk. I just needed to breathe, and I came back and he'd had a heart issue, like a heart failure. And I was sat there going, I left the house for 5 seconds to go get some air, and I'm literally killing this man. Like, so I've clearly done something wrong. And I had to go back to Ireland because he couldn't look after me anymore. He was in hospital. And I went straight back into the same shit. It's just like, I can't get away from this. I'm living everywhere. I'm moving from pillar to post. I've been to a different country and I'm still back. Like, something needs to change. Yeah. And it did. I was working from home one day and I just decided to Google like helpline things for just getting out of a bad situation, an abusive situation. And I actually ended up emailing an Australian suicidal helpline somehow, because I didn't know how the internet worked. I wasn't aware it was freaking miles away. And they said, your situation is dire. You need to get out, but there's nothing we can do from Australia. Is there any way you can give us your like nearest police station or like town police or something? And I did. I provided them with the Newry police phone number. They actually contacted the police from Australia, and the police came to my nan and granddad's house, which I nearly shit myself when they turned up outside. I was like, oh no, I've actually gone and done this now. Like, what the fuck is going to happen? So they hauled me off to the police station. But before I got in the car, this was the last time I saw my nan and granddad. I wasn't aware that that was going to be the case. But when I was leaving, I had to get a bag, and because they said I might be in the police station overnight. And the last thing my granddad said to me was, all you've ever wanted is dick. Now you're going to get it. And that's the last thing he ever said to me. And he did actually email afterwards and say some stuff, apologies and whatnot. But he did say later on that all I've ever craved is male attention. And that's why I got what I got. I deserved it and I liked it. I never tried to push anyone away or fight against it. And it's like, how do you know that? you don't know what I was doing. Also, just as a matter of fact, yes, I did, but it made it worse. So you kind of just stay still and don't do anything until it's over. But the fact that they were the last words that ever came out of his mouth to me, unbelievable. Like, who says that? Also in front of the police, and I'm getting into the car. The last thing you shout from your doorstep is that. Anyway, arsehole. So I went to the police station, told them my story, and they got me into a women's shelter in Newry. And I was there for quite a while, actually. Obviously, I had nothing. I had a little bit of savings, and my suitcase, which still had all my possessions in it. And I went and got a new phone, actually, with Anne. She went and got me my first normal phone so I could throw away that stupid BlackBerry. And she took me on my first night out when I was in this women's shelter. She took me to have my first proper drink and everything. I still dressed like a plebe, which was tragic. But she did actually help me a lot when I got out, just introduced me to just normal world stuff. And the women's shelter tried to help me get a job, and tried looking for housing and accommodation and things for me. Didn't really work because the brethren used to park outside and just sit there. And if I was to ever leave or go for a walk or go into town to the shops, they were always there, constantly following me. And it got to a point where I was obviously still having contact with some of the priests and some of my friends. They somehow managed to get me out of that women's shelter to have a priestly with me in one of the priest's son's homes, and they offered me a new job. They offered me somewhere different to live in the cult. And at that point, I didn't know what I was supposed to do in the women's shelter or outside, because I didn't know anyone. I didn't have anything, and I was pretty scared. So this opportunity of technically a change in my whole life, but back to where I was comfortable, like I knew what was happening, I just took it. And I left the women's shelter. That lasted for 2 days. And I was straight back in the women's shelter again because I could not do it. It was just the same stuff was happening, just in a different situation. So I was back in the women's shelter, and that is when I met a man on Facebook who was in the UK. And I had no idea what I was doing. I had no clue what I was doing. And we messaged constantly. We FaceTimed, but he was always in the dark. I never actually saw his face, which now, looking back, red flag. What the hell? If you're not seeing someone's face before you meet them and move country for them, definitely don't do that. But he was giving me the attention that I'd kind of always wanted. I just wanted someone to love me ever since I was a little kid, because people just didn't seem to care. And he was saying things, we'll provide you with a safe... He lived with his dad. We'll provide you with a safe home, like everything you've been through. We can get you a job at the corner shop. Like, you can have as much freedom as you want. I'll introduce you to my friends. You'll have a life. Also, you can move country and get away from that. Like, you can start brand new. And because I'd now got something concrete, I obviously didn't know this person at all. It was just like, you know what? I'm just going to go for it. Nothing can be worse than what's happening right now. Nothing. So I got my suitcase and upped and left, booked a flight, and I'd never travelled on my own like that. I was scared shitless. And coming from such a small place as well into London, of all places, my social anxiety went through the roof. I was panicking. There was people everywhere. The airport was massive. But I got a taxi down to his house and met him and his dad for the first time. Obviously not cult members. These were outsiders. And I didn't know what I was doing with myself. I was just 19 and very vulnerable, very traumatized, and craving like someone to just look after me. That he definitely took advantage of that. He didn't do anything non-consensual, but I still didn't really understand what was happening because it had been drummed in that this is how someone loves you. So I let it happen a lot more than my body personally wanted it to happen. And within 3 months, I still didn't have a job. I was trying to get back on my feet. Within 3 months, I was pregnant. Oops. Great. 3 months of leaving the cult and I am now pregnant. Nice one. I was so scared. It's just like, I still didn't know anybody. I hadn't made any friends. I hadn't had a career. I hadn't had all of the things that I wanted to do leaving the cult. I still hadn't done it. And now I felt trapped again. It's like, I've got a good life. Like things are okay now. I can breathe. I've got some freedom, but now I don't. Now I'm pregnant. And I didn't know what to do. When I found out, I was actually I eventually got a job at a soccer centre, working behind the bar and receptionist and stuff. When I found out, I was just being sick at work, and the girl said, "I think you might be pregnant," And I was like, well, okay, bit confused there, but didn't know about contraception because you're not taught that. Didn't know about protection because you're not taught that either. So yeah, took a test, pregnant, great. Now what the fuck do I do? I had no idea what you're supposed to do. I was 19 and I spoke to this guy's dad about it before I'd even spoken to my partner at the time, and said, I took a test and I'm pregnant. And his face, he didn't even know me. I'd been there for 3 months. And he was like, okay, this is not a great situation. And also, I don't think your partner's going to be too happy about that right now, because that was not the plan. But he was very supportive. He helped me get in touch with hospitals and all the stuff that you normally do, because he already had some grandkids. And yeah, had a little boy. Then it didn't go the best from there. I let certain people back into my life because I felt like I needed some support from family, and they definitely took advantage of that. Now they had something that they could take away from me, nearly as a punishment, I'd say, of leaving. I did have to leave my child's dad. He started to get very abusive, especially towards the child at one point. He was a good dad. He did try. I'm not going to put him down, but things got to him a lot, and I had to get away with it. So yeah, so I was in contact with someone from Kent at the time, and he offered for me to come down and live with him. Also, not part of the cult, and I obviously took my child, which didn't go down very well. And my life started to get so much better. I had my kid. It was a bit of a bad situation because I didn't really want to be in contact with his dad or anything, my son's dad. But I just kind of got on with my life for a little bit. This man was amazing. He was like an actual dad to me. He looked after me, made sure my son had everything. He was even trying to get me into my own place, helped me, like pushed me to go to groups to find jobs and support groups for single mums. Like, he was so good. But I was getting very stressed with looking after my son by myself. I'd again moved to a completely new place. I knew nobody. I didn't have any support at all aside from him, but he was obviously at work during the days. And yeah, the family member that I let back into my life stupidly because I needed somebody offered to just have my son for a weekend, just to help me out so I could get some sleep. No. And I never saw him again. Yeah, so that was not good. And then yeah, I didn't know what to do with that.
Is this person part of the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church? Like, is it somebody within the church that got him?
Yeah.
And this is what they do, right? This is not the first time we've heard of this, right? This is what we hear is like they get them for just coerce you to give them for just one night, and then you never see them again.
It was as well. It didn't make sense. When it came to Monday morning, and he was meant to be dropped back off on Sunday night, and I was just like, oh, maybe I got confused, and she's going to bring him back like actually after the weekend. And I called her, and she said, I just don't think it's a very good living situation and like financial situation where you are now, and you're not good mentally to be looking after a 4-month-old baby right now. And I said, you don't know my situation, though. We haven't actually had a discussion about that. You're just assuming from what you can see. Yes, I am living with someone that I didn't really know. And I'm by myself. And yes, my finances aren't great, but I get support from the government. I can pay for my child. He's eating and got clean nappies. He's fine. There's nothing wrong with him. But she just refused to give him back. And I was like, you know what? Okay, we'll leave it for a little bit. I can get myself back to where I need to be. But I want to see him. Like, I want to make sure he's okay. Like, have contact with him, obviously. And she did. She would come down to where I was living at the time, and I'd spend the day with him. We'd go out shopping. We'd go to like the soft play areas when he was a little bit older. Everything seemed to be okay. She just would not give him back. And the next thing I know, in the post, I have court papers. And I wasn't getting any of those vibes from her at all the whole time we were meeting up and going for coffee and having conversations, which in itself should never have been happening because she was part of the cult and I wasn't, and you don't eat with people. So doesn't make sense anyway. And yeah, the court papers basically said that they were going to try and get custody of him, which was confusing for me. I honestly had no idea what was going on. I think I was 20 at that point. So I was still pretty young, and I didn't have money for solicitors. I didn't really know much about what was happening. My ex-partner got the same papers and he was fuming. I think Jackie remembers a little bit, to be honest, about that. He was an angry man. He got angry. And I fully understand now. At the time, I was young and naive and stupid, and I want this to be about me. And I was really like that. I was horrible. And I feel bad now, but he got angry, and I understand why. Anyway, we did go to court, and it was a long, lengthy process, and it was bullshit. I'm sorry, they have got to have faked documents and paid that judge, because the shit that they came up with to say why I couldn't have him back was an absolute joke.
Yeah, they're known for that.
Were they trying to make out, I mean, I assume essentially they were making out you were an unfit mother and your little boy wouldn't be safe with you, which is something we've all heard happening before, haven't we, with other cases? Yeah. But was what they were saying, did you think was fabricated at the time?
100%, yeah. Because I knew in myself that what they were supposedly saying I had done was very incorrect. Now, I understand that they brought up I had been sectioned and self-harmed, but my argument to that was way before I'd had my son, and I've had a diagnosis since when I was pregnant to make sure I'm stable, and I am. They have no reason to say that I have any mental illnesses or anything's wrong with me right now. So, and I had the documents to prove that. So that kind of got blown over. They were just chatting shit, trying to say something. And then they came up with these doctors' reports about abuse to my son, sexual, might I add. And even my ex-partner at the time, he did say something, and I understand you have to word things very carefully in court. He did say, when I'm not there, I don't know what she's doing. He did not mean that in a bad way, but they had to take it in a certain way. It baffled me. The doctor's surgery that they even said they got these reports from, I don't even know where that is. It wasn't even in the location where I was at the time. So that confused me even more. It's like, how can... I'm baffled. Like, if I'm going to... He's registered at this doctor's surgery. So why would I take him somewhere completely different to report something that I had supposedly done? That in itself is confusing.
I think we all here would understand why the brethren or the family within the brethren were trying to do this. But to explain to listeners who don't know, what do you think their overriding concern for your son would have been? Why? I mean, he was just a baby at this point. So why do you think they were so desperate to get him, I assume, off you, but not only off you, back into the brethren?
I think it was just a way, and they're still doing it now, to be perfectly honest, it's just a way of getting back at me, making me feel like shit, and just making my life difficult, like they don't want me to move on. And to be perfectly honest, I've never actually been, as far as my knowledge is good to me, I've never actually been excommunicated or spoken to about leaving. So technically I could still go back, and I've still had offers. So I think they're trying to get everything of mine to entice me back.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah. That to me is their utmost motive. Here's what I want to say, because this has been a huge issue. I want to say, Carmen, in the last probably a couple of weeks, 2-3 weeks, is I need the people, the viewers and listeners inside the PBCC to hear me on this. The amount of lies and exaggeration and the things that you were told that goes on out here that ex-members have done, or how things have gone down, is 99.9% lies or exaggerated beyond comprehension for you to stay in a fearful position so that you can take their side versus an ex-members or somebody who in their side is in trouble. So, like, it breaks my heart and soul to hear this, Tiffany, and when this has to do with your son, because we have experienced this so loud lately with the things that have come, the things that have been reported to us, things that we're up against with situations, let's just say. And it always comes back down to how much they lie in there. They lie so much. When I first decided to talk about what went on with me publicly, I shouldn't even say publicly, but when I first decided I wanted to deal with this, I mean, the monkey was out of the cage. I wasn't being able, there's no way of putting it back in its cage. It was out and it was screaming. And my first gut instinct, it wasn't to go to the police. It wasn't to go and do a podcast. It was none of that. It was to go to my eldest sister, who had been a part of some of what happened to me. And you know what she told me? She told me that, Cheryl, I need you to understand that 99% of what you hear is false. And I want to return back to that comment and say to her and to other people that are in there and believe that we know more than you out here of what's going on. We have insiders that contact us to know what is going on because they don't know. And that 99% of what you hear about what these apostates or situations of recent leavers is 99% false. I need you to try and find a way to open your minds, especially listening to Tiffany's story. And those that are going to be close to Tiffany's story are going to be like, oh, she's telling that's lies. It's all lies that she's saying. I need you to have half a heart, half a mind. That's all I'm asking for. And sit back and ask yourself, you know what? I'm going to listen to Tiffany's story. Don't listen with your program brainwashed mind. I want you to listen with your heart and believe that, you know what? Maybe what you were fed was bullshit.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Go on, Cheryl. No, go on.
I was going to say, why would Tiffany sit here in the public's eye? It doesn't serve her. Right? It's the same thing with my story. It doesn't serve me. Why would I go public? Why would Tiffany go public and expose ourselves the way that we're exposing ourselves? Like, it just doesn't make sense. So I think that my appeal, this is my Cheryl rant for this podcast. I haven't done one in a few podcasts, but I'm really riled up right now.
You touched a nerve, Tiff. Well done.
It did. It hit a nerve. And only because we're dealing with this right now with other situations on how thwarted and how much lying to them is like going to the fridge and grabbing a cup of milk. It is that easy for them. Where with us, like, we've had to fight tooth and nail to be our authentic selves and to fight for who we are right now. We have no reason to lie. So I think I'm just really, really appealing and requesting the people who are going to pull up this podcast because they knew of Tiffany's story. I want you to just have some freaking compassion and listen to her side of the story before you jump to what you were told.
And there's another factor to this. I like to think the platform of these podcasts are for people to tell their story, as you have done tonight, Tiff. And I'd like to think people can tell their story in a non-judgmental environment on this podcast. And what that means is, if there is another side to the story that the brethren want to put, they're welcome to come on. Yes. We won't give them a hard time. We will listen to their side of the story. So to people inside the brethren, that would be a question. We've had how many podcasts, Cheryl's? Over 60.
We're at like, what, 64 we're going to be about to put out, or 65? Yeah.
Yeah, and I know, but the majority have been with ex-members telling their story. So if there's another side to every one of those stories, why has nobody in the brethren felt comfortable or free to come and put their side of the story? Because we'll listen.
Oh, we're absolutely. Happy to listen. This is a neutral ground.
It's just telling a story.
Yeah.
So, and I feel that quite strongly. People say behind the scenes, there's two sides to every story. There is. Yeah. So come and tell your side too, because it's not a bullfight. It's just a non-judgmental way to explain what's happening here, to expose what's happening here.
And I'd love to hear the other side of
my rant. That's my rant for the evening.
And I think Tiffany's, we tell it to everybody. This is a healing journey for everybody. And that's what this podcast was created for. It was to be a part of the healing journey. And I want to add a little bit more into that, Jackie, and say that, yes, it is. It's the members inside. And it's also to the ex-members that might also have a different perception on certain people's stories and how they went down. Well, you know what? Our podcast is a neutral ground for each person to come on and give their truth. That is their story. This is how Tiffany experienced what she went through. This is how every survivor experienced what they get through. You cannot be on the outside and say that was false. That didn't happen. Because if you're saying that, you're putting yourself right back into the PBCC way of thinking. So if you disagree with how somebody said it, then feel free, come on, tell your story, tell your side of the story in a non-judgmental way, because that is what we're trying to do. We're trying to create a landing pad that is neutral. It is neutral. Everybody needs to be given the opportunity to get off their chest what happened to them through their eyes, through their heart, through their soul. My siblings cannot sit in Maple Creek and wherever else they are and say that didn't happen, Cheryl, and you were watched 24/7. It's bullshit. You weren't there. You were not there. You didn't. There's like you weren't there, and if you weren't there, keep your fucking judgments to yourself. Pardon my French now, right? Like, I think we're just trying to really, really 64 podcasts into this, I think it's super important we keep our eye on the goal and our eye on why we started this. And that was to remain neutral and have every survivor, every abused victim come on and tell it their way and how that's all you can do.
I agree. Totally. And Tiffany, I want to ask if you're happy to tell us what was the outcome of the case with your little boy?
So that family member did win custody. I think what didn't help is I didn't have any support. There was no one there for me. I didn't have any representative. I didn't have anyone that could fight for me. No one, again, gave two shits. And they had the backing of thousands and thousands of pounds solicitor, and the cult. Like, they had everything. It really annoyed me that I know everyone has their own opinion. Everyone can say I'm chatting shit or whatever, but I know in myself that what they had said I'd done, what they had supposedly said that I couldn't do, I wasn't a fit mum, was so wrong. Like, yes, I was traumatized and I was very unsteady and I was 20, but it's not really fucking surprising. Like, I had just moved to a new place. My baby was 4 months old and I had no support. I had no money. I had nothing. And it's not surprising. And I completely understand that at that point in time, they could look after him better than I could. 100%. They're a family. They have the whole cult behind them. They're rolling in money and support systems and everything. Fine. But it was just wrong the way they went about it. And when they did get custody, my ex-partner went through the roof. He was so angry. And I think it's because everything I had told him about the church, he just didn't want his son to be part of that. And I told him to basically get a grip. And that wasn't the best thing to say. It was so harsh. He had genuinely tried. And I feel bad now. But we didn't. My ex-partner had visitation rights to see him every Saturday in a controlled environment in one of those like contact center things. And I had none. I had no.
So why did they not even allow you to have visiting rights to your son? Because, I'm trying to think of this from a court perspective, assuming that whatever they said, for whatever reason, was found to be believable, and that it was decided that perhaps you weren't stable enough to have your son with you 24/7. Why then did they, for you to see your son supported, you were a young mother, you just needed support.
Exactly. That's all it was that I needed. I just needed.
Why was that bit denied to you? That's what I don't understand. Yes, you needed help with your son. I think that's understandable. But why was the bit of, okay, you couldn't see your son?
I honestly don't know. The only thing that was said when I got the paperwork and everything ended afterwards is that I would harm my son. Even in a controlled environment, I could lash out. Or try and run off with him, or whatever it was. One of the things they did say at the time was that I tried to poison him by putting something in his bottle, like wrong quantities of stuff. So basically he could have too much air in his system and he could like suffocate or something. I don't know. And in court at the time, I said, even if this was possible, is it actually surprising? I had no idea how to raise a child. No one had ever told me how to look after a baby or feed one or anything. I didn't have a mum figure in my life. Like, I had to figure it out myself. My home nurse was really good, but she was only there once a month. And I had already tried to look after him at that point before she got there. And I don't know what I'm doing. My partner has no idea what he's doing. And it was all very, if it's possible, then you kind of have to I'm not going to have done it on purpose. I love my kid. Like, why would I do that? I'm trying to give my child, who definitely was not planned, but a miracle, a life that I couldn't have. And you're specifically saying that I hurt him on purpose because I'm mentally unstable. That's not how it works. So they that's what they said, that I wasn't allowed to have any kind of visitation or see him just in case I lashed out. Right. And even now, I haven't seen him since he was about just over a year, and he's 6 now. And wrong. I get photos on his birthday.
That's just wrong.
That's it.
Do they send photos? Do you get photos?
I get photos on his birthday. That's it, which is fine. I still get photos. But there's a lot of other stuff going on in the background that just, it hurts. And I know this family member's doing things on purpose to hurt me. And the fact that I've been on FaceTime a few times when he was just over 1, and hearing my son call her mum fucked me up. It fucked me up inside. And it's just like, you could at least have had the decency to, it doesn't have to know who I am, that it's beside the point, but have the decency to teach him that you're not his mum, because that fucking hurt. Like, it proper did. And I understand that he's going to grow up and have a not 100% sure what's going on, because he's going to go to school at some point and people are going to say, that's not your mum. And I understand that, and I feel bad, but it's not my fault. I'm not blaming myself for that. They did what they did, and they fucked him up, to be perfectly honest. And I know he's going to get bullied because he's partially blind and he's autistic and all of that stuff as well. So I feel bad for him, but they did that, and he's going to get the same level of bullying that I got, if not worse, because of his situation and what's wrong with him. And they did that, not me. And I know for a fact that it's my fault, which hurts even more. It's like, well, that didn't have to happen. You just thought, we can take him. Let's do that. And it hurts. Like, I don't understand. And the fact that they're still ongoing with hurting me 10 years later. I've been left for 10 years nearly. Well, sort of. I can't really remember when I left now. It's been a long time, and I've never had the conversation of being excommunicated. I've never been told anything that related, and they're still in contact with me about, you can live by yourself, you can have your own flat, you can have your son back, you'd have a really good, like, you wouldn't have to worry about money anymore. And they're digging at things that they know I struggle with now, which sucks. And there's more court cases at the moment, which I don't want to delve into too much because it's still ongoing, but they're technically suing me for my life right now, literally, which is also illegal. As far as I'm aware, some of the things they're trying, some of the money they're trying to get off of me for things like the wages I got paid at my job in the cult is illegal. You can't do that. As far as I'm aware, anyway, I earned that money as a legal job.
So they're coming after you for money that you earned in there when you were in there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you know what? I just want to come back here to this whole Hitler thing. Like, I just don't, I think if you guys, if this doesn't make the scales fall from your eyes, I don't know what will. But he Bruce D. Hitler has programmed his flock to literally be exactly what Hitler's flock was. I need people to understand this. And I hope so bad that there's some rude awakenings happening while people listen and watch this podcast of the absolute horrific audacity of the emotional and spiritual war we are in. And this is why I will not give up. And I'm sitting here and I'm just in my mind thinking of how can we help Tiff? And it's just, I will not back down. I will not back down. We have made such a crack in there that all we got to do is put little pieces of dynamite all along and it comes crumbling down.
Yeah. But it's still ongoing. And like the little blip earlier, I say things and I'm not scared of them as people. I know I'm a lot stronger than that now. They can go do one, but I'm still in the back of my head. I'm so worried that someone's going to find me and just stuff's going to happen. I see them preaching in town all the time, and the amount of times I want to fly kick one of them in the face is a joke. But I just walk on past as if I don't even know who they are. And it's like I moved here for a reason. I didn't realize they were here as well. They're freaking everywhere. Like, you can't get away from it. But
and there's ways to keep yourself protected. There's and I'll email you later and give you some things that you can look for, or things that you can dive into. I'm sure you'd be able to get them through the police system there, or through the an advocacy center. So I'll email you privately on that there is ways to keep you safe, to be able to do what you need to do in this, because this is a prime example where there needs to be some sort of justice, and to let them know the more protection you get is the more vocal you get, right? And I know that it sounds counterintuitive, but it's true. If I go missing or something happens to me, you all know who did it.
Everyone is going after them.
Right? Everybody knows, right? I mean, I do have very good protection that gets me a police within seconds. But just like it is, that's kind of what I want to convey to people who are afraid of coming forward, is the more you come forward is the more protection you actually give yourself.
And I think part of it is, and I'm seeing it happening right now in another situation now, the brethren, when you're in a situation where you're vulnerable, Tiffany, where most people, when they leave, especially if they leave on their own, at that point in time, they're vulnerable. Whatever the situation, whatever's happened, whatever they've done, they're vulnerable. They know very little about the outside world. And that's where essentially the brethren use the courts or their coercive powers to bully that person. And I think that's where the fear stems that you may feel. It's not that you're frightened of them as people. It's the fact that they know you, somebody leaving the brethren has been protected from the outside world for all of their life. I know you had your very early life outside the brethren, but essentially your growing up years was lived a brethren life. So your knowledge of where you can go, who you can do, you don't get taught that in the schools. You don't get taught about helplines and where you could perhaps go if you feel vulnerable or you feel you're being abused in some way or another. And they know that. And then it's very easy to push somebody into a corner. And I think it's a very big power imbalance at the point of somebody leaving. And to me, it stems from those priestly visits where people have, even, and I know you were a young girl with two guys, but even having two priests and another male isn't right, because the male who's having the priestly visit has nobody to advocate for them. And they're probably mentally fragile. And I think it stems from that. It's that it's a very subtle form of coercion and bullying that we live with all our lives, and to break free of that. And I think speaking out and then realizing there's a strength in numbers, which is what I hope these podcasts do. You think, hold on a minute, I'm not the only one. And, life didn't go as I planned, but I'm not the only one. And that doesn't matter. It still doesn't make the way people behave right.
And I think it's also realizing, Tiff, that I know it's hard. You've got a son in there now, right? This is what I try and stress those people who have maybe tidbits of connection with their family in there, or they don't want to speak out in fear of losing their kids. It's actually the opposite. When you put your face forward, exactly as how you're doing today, Tiffany, it is a source of strength. It is a sign of strength. And to me, I would much rather, if I had children in there, I really admire Anne for this, right? With how vocal and what an advocate she is for her children, because one day her children are going to see something, whether they're married and have it, what does it matter? But truth always wins. The light always wins. And one day they're going to look at their mom. They're not going to look at her as an apostate. Your son isn't going to look at you as an apostate. They're going to look at you and think, wow, what a strong mom I have. And those moms and those people who take the daring chance to do this are actually preparing a path for your family and your children to leave, because you've stepped yourself up into the front line and said, I'm here, I'm going to fight for you, and I love you because this is how I choose to show you what courage looks like. We have to reflect to them what they need to do in there. And this is what I said in my last podcast. We need more of you. We need more people looking at their fear and holding it and realizing that it is a false illusion of whatever tiny tidbits you have of your family connection in there. It's false. It is not going to stand up because it's false. What you need to be able to do is show how you can do what you need them to do inside there. It's a mere reflection.
And I think for everybody that is inside there, one of the biggest takeaways from this podcast is this is a group that claims to be a mainstream Christian church. And yet a young lady like Tiffany, all they have given her is bullying. They have overrode her. They have treated her with careless, callous abandon. At every junction that she reached out for help, for support, for guidance, for love, they came back at her. They bullied her. They treated her just callously. Just the absolute opposite of Christianity. And I guess I just reach out to everyone that sees this and sit back and ask yourself, what I'm witnessing, is this Christianity? Is this care, compassion? Because if they really were Christian, they would have made every avenue available for this young lady. And I guess I find it just shocking and abhorrent.
It is. Yeah, this has rattled my feathers. Yeah. And I hope, Tiffany, that as a mother, and we all know, us that are mothers, how much guilt and shame that we carry on our shoulders just from everyday things, that I hope that you have the compassion for yourself to be able to look back on your life on why you would have made the decisions that you had made due to the obstacles that you occurred right from the first moment when they ripped you out of your normal life and threw you into such confinement, right? Because as I was listening to your story, you had every child transitions through any kind of major decision that our parents make. We have to transition. And in transitioning, there needs to be careful explanations, careful planning. That to me, what I heard from this podcast is that you didn't have any care in transitioning from into the church, from a public school to a brethren school, from being sent from pillar to post how many times. You had the care and compassion and the landing pad and the space held for you that you needed, you didn't get. And so that will reflect major life decisions that caught up to you after you left, right? So I just hope that you have in you the compassion to look at some of the situations and choices that you made, that they were not your fault.
Yeah. I do still find it pretty hard. I do blame myself, even for things I do today. I blame myself for everything. If something goes wrong, or it's always, oh shit, I've upset this person, or I've done this, and it's always my fault, when most of the time it's just not.
No. Yeah.
And that's
kind of scarring.
that is the product of the way you were treated. And you have to keep telling yourself, I am blaming myself because that's how I was brought up to be. And that's not how it should be.
No.
I have probably 100 sticky notes around my house that have, like, I'm constantly adding to them so that I'm seeing them all the time because I'm in the heightened blood of what I went through, right? We also have those somatic responses that our body puts ourselves back into. And I am like, and so that's one of those things is that I am a product of what I was raised to be, but I'm changing that, right? So it's trying to find those ways that you can hold your shame and guilt and realize that shame and guilt is what they want you to be. So when you take your power back, exactly with what you're doing today, you're taking your power back and saying no more.
Yeah. And I think it's exactly that. It's the realization that a lot of decisions and things, and I think I remember saying this with Abby actually, behavior and so on was a product of the environment you were in.
Yeah.
And if somebody had taken you and put you in a completely different environment, everything may have been very different. And that's luck of life in a way. Yeah. And we can't change luck of life. But what you can do is recognize it. And then, as Cheryl says, learn to make your peace with it.
Yeah.
Because it is, isn't it? It's you couldn't help being taken back into the brethren when you were 7 years old.
No.
And what happened? So you had no control. That's luck of life. But making your peace with it is empowering. And as Cheryl says.
And you know what? I do hope one day that they are held accountable for the amount of scarring that they've done.
I do as well.
Yeah. You know that is something, obviously, every country, we all have our hands held together. That is a goal we have, right? That is a goal we have, is to hold them accountable for the amount of scarring that, I don't care what anybody says, we always walk with crutches, but you learn how to walk with those crutches with the most extreme glitter and sparkle and, right? You learn how to walk with those crutches well, right? Anybody who's been in a cult the way that we've been in a cult is learning how to navigate the scarring that comes from it. But one day, I truly believe they will be held accountable. I really do.
I do too, Cheryl.
Yeah. Much sooner than later.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, it's crumbling fast.
Because it still gets to me every day now. It's been so long since I left. And even today, for example, I break just what the fuck? My life is so shitty. Obviously now it's okay, and I have I have a very, very small circle because I find it hard to trust and let people in, obviously. But the people I do have in my life right now are so supportive, but sometimes it gets to a point where I'll cause issues because it's too good. And why on earth are you with me? What, I don't deserve this. Like, why do you even like me? Why are you giving me the time of day? And it's been drummed into me so much that I am worthless and just a shit person, that when something good happens, I make it bad, and that causes problems, obviously. And I struggle to get over it sometimes.
And that's one of the patterns from a narcissistic culture that we were raised in, right?
Yeah.
Is that's what they want to leave you with, right? Those are the imprints they leave you with. And those are the things that we have to try and catch ourselves on, and then pick up our own personal power and be like, no, you know what? I do deserve as good as it can be out here, which is really good. Yes, we all go through triggered moments. Every human does. And sometimes those triggered moments can take us a while to bounce back from, right? But at least out here, we have the tools. We have the freedom of choice on how to deal with those triggered moments, right? We can choose our support. Yeah. We can get the support from therapy. We're not forced to go and drink our sorrows away because that's all they have in there, right? They don't have access to the therapy that we can have out here. So I do think that personal empowerment really does come from doing another level of healing, like what you're doing when you finally come forward on a platform for not only for yourself, but to help others. There's just this sense of us all being together and being like, yeah, you know what? We are going to support each other and we are going to make these changes. Yeah. You are such an incredible human. Tiffany, I hope you see what we see. It is such a shame and an absolute travesty of what you've been through. I hope that in the next bit with things that are changing and coming about, that you will be reunited with your son. There are changes that are happening. And I know that those changes will force things to change inside the PBCC. This is not going to last the way that it's been lasting. And I just really, really appreciate you having the courage to come on and open yourself up this way.
Thank you, Tiffany. You've shown your, I have huge admiration for the fact where you've spoken and told your story. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, it was hard, but I've said it now. Hopefully I can just get over some stuff now, to be honest.
Yeah.
I haven't really spoken about it, so it's just been nice to get it out. And I don't also in like now relationships and things, I don't like talking about it, but sometimes they have to kind of have an understanding as to why you might react a certain way to something, so they know a little bit, but I never tell my actual like full everything. So hopefully when he watches this, he might understand a little bit.
Yeah. You can give the podcast.
And it is important. I think a lot of us that have spouses that were never in there, I'll just come out and say it. We were given a recording of a priestly visit that was very much like the priestly visits I went through. It was horrendous. And I gave it to my husband and I said, I need you to listen to this so that you understand why I'm so defensive, because this is a huge thing for me. And it's good to have this. Another reason why these podcasts are so good is it's helping those non-PBC or non-exclusive brethren spouses or family members to be able to watch them and be like, I get what you went through now. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, my dear. And I hope this brings some good results for you.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. Okay, thanks everyone for joining us. Until next time.
Thank you, Tiffany. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Much love to you all.
If you are in a high-demand religious group and need help, please go to oliveleaf.network. To share your story or be a guest on the show, email info.getalife@proton.me. Please remember to like this video, subscribe to Get a Life, and comment.